It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
That is a new powerful video from victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Welcome back to the Sanity Podcast. Dave and Allison here. Been a little bit of time off, but good to be back with you, my friend. And this is really the pivotal week for the Epstein story. After all these years, I do believe one way or another, we're going to have some closure on this story. And of course, the breaking news is, Allison, that President Trump says the House should vote to release the Epstein files, which stunned everyone. He added, "We have nothing to hide." What are your thoughts?
About time. About time he said that, because it's been a year where people are like, what is he hiding? Why doesn't he? I mean, just this weekend, he was calling for them not to be released. Let's remember. I mean, he was just saying, like, it's all a hoax. Okay, so, here again with President Trump, this is always the case. He speaks out of both sides of his mouth. He says completely contradictory things, so you can never pin him down to any one position. He's done this his whole life. Okay, so it's impossible to know how he really feels or thinks about it. But it was very curious that he wasn't pushing for them to be released, because he was doing this strange thing of, you should look at what Bill Clinton, what's happening to Bill Clinton in the files. You should look at Larry Summers. But then, do you want the files released or not released? Make up your mind. So it only stands to reason. Now, personally, Dave, from everything that I've read and what I know about Donald Trump so far, I don't think that there's any bombshell about him in the files. I think that the bombshell about him is that he was closer to Jeffrey Epstein than anybody ever likes to admit, number one. Number two, Jeffrey Epstein thought he was the least decent human he'd ever met. Jeffrey Epstein, a predator, thinks that Donald Trump does not have, this is a quote, one decent cell in his body. He's the worst person he's ever known. Okay, so that's not great. That's not a great look. And so I think that that's the kind of stuff that you're going to see. But I don't think there's any smoking gun in there about Donald Trump.
I don't either. And the reason I don't is very simple. The Biden administration had these files for 4 years. And if they had that, they certainly would have found a way to put them out there. I agree with you. Now, I also believe that the president has a card here. He said, I want the House to go ahead and vote and release the files. I believe he only said that because he knows the Senate will vote not to do so. That is what I believe here, because there's no way he genuinely has reversed course on this entire campaign of denial and secrecy. I believe he knows that John Thune and the Senate votes are not there to release them. Why do I say that?
Yeah, I like what you're saying, but then why doesn't he want them released? If there's no smoking gun, why doesn't he want the Epstein files released?
I think you're spot on about the fact that it just paints a much broader picture of their relationship, his involvement. Look, I don't even think the president slept with an underage girl. I would love if someone asked him that question. No one ever would, of course. But here's why I say that I believe the Senate will vote to not release them, is because the president never waits for Congress to do anything that he wants done. If the president wanted the files out there, they would be out there. He would find a way to go around Congress, go around the courts, and tell his DOJ to do it and release them now. Let's just be clear. He investigated his political rivals, James Comey, which I believe that will be tossed out. John Bolton, the list goes on and on. When he wants something done, he tells his DOJ, which is no longer independent, to do it, and they do so. He hasn't done that. He won't do that. And so there must be some reason he's confident these files don't see the light of day.
Here's what I think is interesting, at least in the House. This is the dividing line. As you say, this is the pivotal moment between whether you stand with MAGA and whether you stand with Donald. Well, I guess what by that I mean Donald Trump, blind allegiance to Donald Trump, or if you stand against predators and you stand for humanity and you stand for law and order. And this is where you can vote to have them released or not. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene has become Exhibit A of what happens when you go against what President Trump wants. And it's been fascinating, Dave. You and I have talked about this on other episodes of Sanity. It is fascinating to watch her transformation. I don't even know what to call it, from the woman who was chasing.
Oh, it's dramatic. Dramatic transformation.
It's a permanent transformation. I don't know what's going on there, but it's definitely fascinating to watch. And how about what he has done, his standard juvenile name calling. He called her wacky. He calls her Marjorie Trader Greene. I gotta give it up for that. Like that, his nicknames are usually so juvenile and absurd, but that one really slaps. I gotta say, the Marjorie Trader Greene. And
It is actually effective. But she pointed this out to Dana Bash and said, that word is actually really dangerous. This is not a silly nickname. She said that is the word that has led people to make threats against her. And she says numerous threats against her to the point that she needs security. So she actually felt that that one was going way too far
I
and will
agree with her, but I
radicalize
wish that
people.
she'd realized that when she liked the post about executing Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama. In other words, this is very hard for me to. I will overcome this, and I will be a bigger person and have empathy. However, it's hard when I watched her chase David Hogg, a survivor of Parkland, around the sidewalks outside of Capitol Hill, yelling at him, harassing him, screaming at him because he wanted gun safety. So, like, I have a hard time with her now coming late to the party about what's dangerous.
I will say this. She's been very consistent about the Epstein files, and she has challenged Trump on a number of other fronts, including foreign wars, tariffs, uh, inflation. She has really challenged what she says is no longer an America first president, but America last. And here's what she said to CNN about this whole feud between her and Trump is about. And she says it's actually very simple.
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. And, you know, I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations. And I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that.
So now that the president has labored her a traitor, said he will no longer support her, and called her wacky, but now that he's called for the Epstein files to be released, will he reverse course on that and say it's all good with Marjorie Taylor Greene? And to your point, like I actually give her a big round of applause for having the guts to stand up to the president on a number of issues. But let's remember, she is still an election denier. She still believes those who attacked the Capitol deserve to be pardoned. So let's have a little perspective about who she is as the left runs to Marjorie Taylor's defense.
I think that's a great point. I think it will go away now. Now that President Trump has reversed course, I do think that the feud with her goes away because that was the sticking point. And I thought it was interesting that she said, it's quote, it's astonishing really how hard he's fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out. Yes, indeed, Marjorie, it was astonishing. So, but I don't know if we'll ever know what that is about. Again, because why wouldn't he, if it's going to be so damaging to Democrats, why wouldn't he want it out? But back to her point of standing with the victims, that does lead us to Megyn Kelly, who's in, I think, of the crosshairs of a lot of people, from MAGA, conservatives, sane human beings, basically took issue with good reason for her drawing this ridiculous distinction between a technical pedophile and a predator, I guess, and someone who preys on underage girls. Okay, sure. Maybe this is the lawyer. This is, to me, when I hear her do this, this is find an angle at all cost. Find a new angle at all cost, because just keep feeding the machine some new angle that sounds vaguely intellectual. Here I am speaking from a lawyer's point of view. There's a technicality I'd like to point out, and missing the forest for the trees, missing what the real story is about, which is Jeffrey Epstein's a disgusting pig who violated 1,000 girls, and Donald Trump was close friends with him. And so what else is there? That's the real story.
To me, this was simply, if you needed a reminder of how far Megyn Kelly is willing to go to defend this president that once attacked her to her very core, this right here is it.
Reminder, I do know somebody very, very close to this case who is in a position to know virtually everything. Not everything, but virtually everything. And this person has told me from the start, years and years ago, that Jeffrey Epstein, in this person's view, was not a pedophile. This is this person's view, who was there for a lot of this, but that he was into the barely legal type. Like, he liked 15-year-old girls. And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. that he wasn't into like 8-year-olds, but he liked the very young teen types that could pass for even younger than they were, but would look legal to a passerby.
What's she even talking about?
Holy crap.
I mean, she's making no sense. The barely legal types? No, actually, Megan, those are illegal. Yeah, actually, Jeffrey Epstein's not allowed to have sex with a 15-year-old, regardless of how old she looks. Does she look younger? That was her point? Or that they look older? None of that makes any sense.
She is attempting to say that you're not a pedophile if you find older looking 15-year-olds attractive, perhaps even if you sleep with them. I thought that was laying the groundwork for what will be uncovered in these Epstein files. It's not entirely clear. I just believe while I said this week is pivotal in terms of the defining moment of will this come out or not, I actually don't believe a single mind will be changed when we see these Epstein files. Not a single mind, because I believe in our country, everyone has already made up their mind about Donald Trump. And if you are still in the MAGA camp, and that is totally fine, I believe you will find an excuse for whatever is in these files. And it might be, yeah, that was just a time. That was just a different time when they palled around with, disgusting people and young girls were hanging out. I don't think anything changes in the MAGA universe
Well, I guess it
or
was
the support or lack thereof of Trump.
But let me just challenge you. I guess that if there's no smoking gun in there, of course, right, nothing changes. It's a nothing burger as far as Donald Trump, of course. But if something were really shocking in there, which I don't think there is, I think that things could. I think that people on the margins of MAGA could.
So what's really
out.
shocking? Let's go there. What is really shocking? Because clearly there is nothing in there that says he slept with anyone underage. Yes?
Oh, well, then nothing. I mean, in other words, only if there were something.
Only.
If that he had slept with a 14-year-old or something. That I think that I hope that we're still living in enough of reality that would change some diehard fans. I hope. I have no way of knowing, but I don't think that that's in there anyway. My point is that I think that the Megyn Kellys of the world, the right-wing media, are so far now in their own impenetrable bubble that they don't know anymore. Their logic has become so rotten, so poisoned, that they don't know anymore that that's not the argument you should be making about Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. So what about your little weird legal distinction? That doesn't mean anything to the victims. Did you see those victims that we started this segment with? You think that they were okay because they were 15? You think they don't carry lifelong trauma? You think they don't want justice? I mean, what is your point in making that distinction?
I do think they made an important point there that they didn't make this about President Trump. I think they said like 3 or 5 administrations, I think is what they said there. So they're making clear this is both parties who have been involved in keeping this a secret. And I think Tuesday is actually an important day because Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie, and Marjorie Taylor Greene will be at the Capitol with those victims who were in the video that we just showed you. And then hopefully the focus shifts to the actual victims. The crimes were committed, and maybe we get some justice. Maybe it is Bill Clinton. I don't know, but maybe somebody goes to jail for this, and hopefully we can wipe away the possibility of a pardon for the monster that is Ghislaine Maxwell, and hopefully we can put this thing to rest. I just don't think anything changes in the MAGAverse. The question I have, and I don't want to get this totally off track, is President Trump has repeatedly said he wants to shift the focus back to affordability and to the economy. I would like that because I believe affordability is a utter disaster right now, that inflation is getting worse and the economy is slowly going off of a cliff. So be careful what you wish for.
I think it's adorable, actually, Dave, that you think that President Trump really wants to talk about affordability and is not just trying to have a distraction away from the Epstein files. That is truly hope springing eternal. And I love that about you. Here's my question. I think part of the reason that I don't think there's any bombshell in there is because Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, in one of those email exchanges that has been released, says Trump is the dog that hasn't barked. That is so telling, meaning like there's nothing like, but I think what he's saying is that of all the investigations, of all the times that he was alone, that Trump was alone with these girls, and I think that they refer to Virginia Giuffre, nothing's come of it. There's no barking here. That this is the dog that hasn't barked. We're not going to hear any barking in these emails, because even Jeffrey Epstein was like, how come we never talk about this one? So I don't think there's anything that's going to be in there, because he talks about that.
And let's not forget, Virginia Giuffre was the one who said, when she was still with us, that she never saw the president do anything inappropriate nor illegal. And so that ultimately may be the final word from someone who's no longer with us. I'm not sure.
Now, do you think that, to start to play off of what you originally said, do you think that there's any amount of public pressure that could change the Senate, that would change what you predict about the Senate voting to not release them?
Will there be 50 votes? Is there any amount of public pressure? I've never seen an issue that pushes these people to do anything uh, morally correct, or to stand against the president. No, I don't. I don't think this is a story that really truly resonates with the majority of the American public. Although I will say it's that young independent media, a lot of the truly conservative, or maybe far to the right of them, podcasters and YouTubers, they are consistent on this issue, and they will not accept Republican senators voting to keep this a secret. So that, I guess, if they're able to mount enough public pressure, that would impact these senators' chance of reelection in 2026. Because right now, the Republicans stand a pretty good, if not definite, chance of holding the Senate. So I'm going to reverse course. I guess if there is math that they believe could change the Senate vote in 2026, I think they would line up and support the release of this. But I don't think that happens. I don't think there's enough of a groundswell in this country. You want to put a bow on it?
Yeah. I mean, my last issue that I want to raise with you, because I think I'm going to write a Substack about this today. I believe that what we've seen from Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, our former colleagues, is straight out of the Fox playbook. I think that what we can just deal with Megyn Kelly for this one, for the Epstein stuff. I think that this is the Roger Ailes playbook of always find a different angle. Don't do what the mainstream media is doing. Do the opposite. Try to think about it from the other way of thinking. And I think that in a lot of ways, it really has worked for Fox to always have a different angle. Always, if you know that the mainstream media says inflation is up, you say inflation's down. If mainstream media says crime is down in Chicago, you say actually no, it's up. And that's why President Trump is sending troops there. Like they live in an upside down world in a way that I think Roger Ailes trained us to think of, like, don't just go along with what mainstream media is saying, find an angle, find a different angle. And it's a very interesting mental exercise to try to do that, to always find a different angle, but it's also intellectually dishonest often. It's not fact-based often. And so that's what I kind of heard with her trying to find yet some new weird angle. What did you hear? What did you think was going on with that point that she was making?
To me, I just thought it was the beginning of the defense of the president's behavior of hanging around a pedophile sex trafficker. That he wasn't the pedophile. They just thought younger girls were hot and they just liked being around them. But there's the independent media, Megyn and Tucker, and then there's Fox, because I made sure to watch, yes, I did, every Fox primetime show after the emails were released. This 20,000 pages of documents that included the dog that hasn't barked, including the email from Jeffrey Epstein that said, of course, Trump knew about the girls, end quote. I watched all of the Fox News primetime lineup. Yeah, you should give me a hand for that. That day, Sean Hannity sat down with J.D. Vance for more than 25 minutes. Not a single question. So he wasn't looking for an alternative angle. He was just straight earmuffs. He had Pam Bondi on the set live in DC that night. Not a single question. They spent 4 or 5 minutes talking about how what California was doing is wrong on redistricting, even though Texas and President Trump started this ball rolling. That, to me, was a clear reminder that Fox doesn't even need to find an alternative angle. They just have the earmuffs on, and they're just ignoring it, and they will continue to do so.
The earmuffs and the muzzle. I mean, how does our old friend Sean Hannity justify that? I mean, that is so amazing. But that's, here again, it is kind of my point, which is when everybody else is doing this, we're going to do the opposite and not talk about it. We're going to be contrarians and not talk about it. That is what they always do.
And there was one part that I should have brought to the show today, but they were talking about what makes the president so special. And JD Vance actually boiled it down to one thing. He says he has a, quote, almost superhuman ability to read people. At which point, any reporter, anchor doing an interview, not a chat, would have said, he palled around with a pedophile sex trafficker who, by all indications, Allison, may have been his closest friend for more than a decade. Donald Trump doesn't have friends. Anthony Scaramucci has told us that on a number of occasions. He said, I'm not insulting him. He just doesn't have them. He doesn't have close friends. And it is clear that no matter what's in these files, these two were very close. So if he has a superhuman ability to read humans, why did he pal around with this monster for more than a decade? That's my last
You
word.
can put a finer point on it than that, Dave Briggs. Well done. Okay, well, this week will be very interesting to see where people stand on all of this.
Yeah, we'll have to talk later in the week and put a bow on this thing. So please subscribe to the channel, like this video, tell your friends. We appreciate it all so much. Good to see you, my friend.
You too, dear.